Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the saddle of a Mongol postman, galloping across the endless steppe under a sky so wide it feels like it's swallowing you whole. Picture this, you're gripping the reins, dust stinging your face, racing to deliver a message that could decide the fate of an empire. The wind howls, your horse snorts, and your stomach's already grumbling. Hope you like chewing leather-tough snacks, because you probably won't survive this job on an empty tank. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a postman in the Mongol Empire, part of the Yam, a postal system so slick it made modern mail look like it's moving by turtle. Stretching from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea in the 13th century, this network of relay stations kept the empire's orders, news, and secrets flowing faster than gossip at a family reunion. You're not just any rider, you're a cog in a machine that Genghis Khan himself perfected, where missing a delivery isn't an option, unless you fancy a one-way trip to the afterlife. The Yam relies on you to cover insane distances, sometimes 200 miles a day, swapping horses at stations called Yams to keep the pace brutal. Mainstream history credits this system with knitting the Mongol Empire together, letting rulers micromanage territories bigger than most modern countries. But here's the quirky bit, some riders wore bells on their belts, jingling like human sleighs to signal their approach. Why? So station managers wouldn't snooze through your arrival. Imagine explaining to the Khan why his war plans got delayed because someone overslept. Historians still argue whether these bells were standard or just a regional flex, but they paint a picture of you rattling across the steppe like a one-man band. Your job's no picnic. The road's a gauntlet of blizzards, bandits, and boredom, with only your horse and a skimpy saddlebag of supplies to keep you going. Speaking of supplies, let's talk about what's in that bag. Spoiler alert. It's not a gourmet picnic. You're carrying the bare minimum to stay alive. And alive is doing some heavy lifting here. Your food's got to be light, non-perishable, and tough enough to survive weeks of bouncing in a sack. Think dried meat, hard bread, maybe some fermented milk solids if you're lucky. No kale smoothies or artisanal cheese boards for you. Just stuff that laughs in the face of spoilage. Your clothes are another story, layers of wool and fur, built to shrug off rain, snow, and the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. Every item's a compromise between weight and survival, because overloading your horse is a rookie mistake you won't make twice. As you ride, the steppe stretches out, a sea of grass that's equal parts beautiful and soul-crushing. You're alone with your thoughts, which is great until you start arguing with yourself about whether that last chunk of dried mutton was worth the jaw workout. Joke number one, if you think your commute's rough, try delivering mail when your GPS is just follow that star until you don't die. The Yam's genius was its simplicity relay stations, every 20-30 miles, fresh horses, and riders like you, who'd rather eat dirt than miss a deadline. But don't get cocky. One wrong turn, and you're lunch for a wolf pack, with a taste for overworked postmen. Your day starts at dawn. If you're lucky enough to sleep, you check your gear, scarf down something that's more calories than food, and hit the trail. The rhythm's hypnotic hooves pounding, wind whistling, your body aching in places you didn't know could ache. By noon, you're dreaming of a hot meal, but all you've got is a strip of meat that's been in your bag so long it's practically a family member. Joke two, you'd trade your horse for a pizza, but the nearest delivery guy's about 700 years away. As the sun dips, you spot the next Yam station, a speck of hope in the distance. Will it have food, a bed, or just a grumpy manager and a horse that hates you? Let's find out tomorrow night, when we dig into what's really in that saddlebag. You're swaying in the saddle, the steppe blurring past as your horse's hooves drum a steady beat. The Yam station you left at dawn is a distant memory, and your next stop's still hours away. Your saddlebag slung across your mount, thumping with every stride. And it's time to take stock of what's keeping you alive out here. This isn't some medieval Uber Eats run your gear, and grub are all you've got until the next jam. And they're as no nonsense as the job itself. Let's unpack that bag and see what a Mongol postman hauls to survive the road's grind, with nothing but starlight and grit for company. The Mongol postal system, mainstream history tells us, was a marvel of logistics, moving messages across thousands of miles with relay riders like you swapping horses to maintain speed. Your saddlebag's a lifeline, packed with essentials that have to last days, sometimes weeks, in a land where convenience store is just a fever dream. First up, food. You've got borts, dried meat ground into a powder so fine it's basically beef sawdust. It's light, lasts forever, and tastes like regret. But it's protein-packed and won't spoil when the sun's roasting you or the rain's turning your bag into a soggy mess. There's also quorut, hard cheese balls made from fermented milk, so tough you'd need a blacksmith to crack them. These are your staples, stuffed in leather pouches to keep out the dust. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen carried arag, fermented mare's milk, in little skin flasks. It's fizzy, sour, and about as appealing as drinking a gym sock. But it's a Mongol favorite, like their version of an energy drink. You sip it sparingly, partly because it's heavy, partly because it makes your horse give you side-eye. Historians still argue whether arag was a standard ration or a luxury for elite riders. But either way, it's your only beverage besides whatever questionable stream water you find. Your bag's also got a small stash of millet or barley flour, which you'll mix with water for a sad, gluey porridge when you're desperate. No fresh fruit, no veggies. Those are for city folk who don't know the joy of chewing the same flavor for a month. Your non-food gear's just as practical. You've got a flint and tinder for fires, because cooking over a candle is a great way to starve. There's a small knife, sharp enough to cut rope or fend off a very optimistic bandit. A spare horsehair cord doubles as a repair kit for your saddle, or a snare if you're lucky enough to spot game. Your water skin's your best friend, though it's usually half empty by noon. Joke one you'd kill for a cold soda, but the nearest ice is probably in the next mountain range. Everything's lightweight, because overloading your horse is like asking it to run a marathon in flip-flops. Clothing's in there too, but not much. You're already wearing most of it wool tunic, felt coat, fur hat, but you've got a spare undershirt and socks, because even nomads hate wet feet. Your bag's made of tough leather, waterproofed with sheep fat, because the steppe doesn't care about your feelings or your soggy snacks. The total weight, maybe 10 pounds, max. Any heavier, and your horse starts plotting mutiny. Joke 2, your saddlebag's so minimalist, it makes a Spartan look like a hoarder. As you ride, you feel the bag's contents shift, a reminder of how little stands between you and the steppe's mercy. You're not eating for pleasure out here. It's fuel, pure and simple. A quick break lets you choke down a handful of borts mixed with water. Think protein shake, but sadder. The stars are peeking out now, and the air's turning sharp. You pull your coat tighter, thankful for its weight, and urge your horse toward the next yam. You're wondering what's for dinner, but deep down, you know more borts, maybe a quorut chaser. Let's hope the station has a fire going, because your fingers are already numb, and you've got miles to go before you sleep. You're hunched over in the saddle, the steppe's endless grass swaying under a sky that's starting to bruise with dusk. Your horse snorts, probably as fed up as you are, and your stomach's growling like it's auditioning for a wolf pack. That saddlebag you rummaged through last night, it's not exactly a buffet, and today's menu is a grim reminder of that. You're a Mongol postman, racing messages across the Yam network, and what you eat out here isn't about flavor, it's about not keeling over before the next relay station. Let's bite into the daily grind of your rations, starting with a star of the showbread so tough it could double as a weapon. Mainstream history notes that the Mongol Empire's postal system relied on riders like you to keep communication flowing, with minimal supplies to maximize speed. Your bread, called bannock, or sometimes just hard bread, is a prime example. It's a dense, unleavened slab of barley or millet flour, baked until it's drier than a desert and harder than your last breakup. You break off a chunk with your knife, and it takes some serious jaw work to chew. This stuff lasts months without molding, which is great, because you're not stopping at a bakery anytime soon. A single piece, about the size of your palm, is maybe 200 calories enough to keep you moving, but not enough to stop you dreaming of real food. Here's the quirky bit: some postmen soak their bread in horse blood for extra protein. Yeah, you heard that right. If you're starving and your horse nicks itself, you might catch a few drops in a cup, dunk your bread, and call it lunch. It's not a daily thing, more of a desperate times vibe, but it's the kind of grim snack that makes you question your career choices. Historians still argue whether this was common or just a wild traveler's tale, but it fits the Mongols' knack for squeezing every resource dry. You're not quite at the blood-dunking stage today, thankfully, but your bread's still a workout. You gnaw on it during a quick break, washing it down with a swig of water that tastes faintly of leather from your skin. Your other rations aren't much cheerier. There's borts, that dried meat powder you're already sick of, which you mix with water for a gritty paste. It's like eating flavored sand, but it's got protein and fat to keep your muscles from quitting. You might have a couple of croûte balls, those rock-hard cheese nuggets tucked in your bag. They're so dry, they suck the moisture from your mouth. But they're a calorie bomb, and you're burning thousands a day riding like your life depends on it. Joke one, you'd trade your whole bag for a burger, but the nearest grill's about 800 years in the future. Water's your biggest headache. You're carrying a skin that holds maybe a liter, and refilling it depends on finding a stream that isn't a mud puddle. You sip sparingly, because running dry in the steppe is a death sentence. No coffee, no tea, just water, and the occasional gulp of arag, if you've got any left. That fermented mare's milk is starting to taste like regret, but it's better than nothing. Joke two, your diet's so basic. It makes a monk's fast look like a Vegas buffet. As you ride, you feel the bread sitting like a brick in your gut. It's doing its job, though your legs aren't shaking, and your head's clear enough to spot the next yam station smoke on the horizon. You're eating maybe 500 calories a day, half what a modern desk jockey needs, and you're riding harder than a Tour de France champ. The math doesn't add up, but somehow you keep going. Maybe it's the adrenaline, or maybe it's just stubbornness. Either way, you tuck the rest of your bread back in the bag, pat your horse, and push on. Dinner's not for hours, and it'll probably be more of the same. Let's hope the next station has a fire to soften that bread, because your teeth are begging for mercy. You're galloping across the steppe, the wind clawing at your face as your horse's mane whips in the breeze. The sun's high, baking the grass into a golden haze, and your stomach's rumbling again. No surprise there. That hard bread you choked down earlier. Barely a memory. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, your saddlebag's your only kitchen. And today's special is meat dried, chewy, and about as fancy as a kick in the shins. Let's dig into the protein that keeps you riding. Because out here, meat isn't just food. It's the fuel of an empire. Mainstream history highlights how the Mongols' nomadic lifestyle leaned hard on meat, with their postal riders like you depending on it to endure grueling treks. Your go-to is borts, that powdered dried meat you're probably cursing by now. It's made from mutton, beef, or sometimes horse, sliced thin, air-dried until it's brittle, then ground into dust. You scoop a handful from a leather pouch, mix it with water, and swallow a paste that's less meal and more survival slurry. A single ounce packs 100 calories and enough protein to keep your muscles from eating themselves. It's shelf-stable for years, which is good, because the steppe doesn't have a fridge or a grocery store. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen carried strips of raw meat under their saddles, letting the horses sweat and heat cook it into jerky by day's end. Sounds like a health code nightmare, but it was a Mongol hack for freshish meat without stopping to build a fire. Historians still argue whether this was widespread or just a tall tale from travelers like Marco Polo, but it's the kind of wild trick that fits your no-frills life. You're not doing the saddle jerky thing today. Your borts is grim enough, but you can't help wondering if it'd taste better than the gritty mush you're swallowing. Your meat ration's small, maybe 4-6 ounces a day, because weight's the enemy. You're burning through calories like a furnace, riding 50-100 miles daily, so every bite counts. Sometimes You chew a strip of whole dried meat instead of borts, tearing at it with your teeth like a wolf. It's tough, salty, and makes your jaw ache, but it's satisfying in a primal way. Joke one you'd kill for a steak, but the nearest cow's probably pulling a cart in China. No sauces, no spices, just meat that's been dead so long, it's practically a fossil. Water's still your lifeline, and you're rationing it like a miser. Mixing borts into a paste helps stretch your supply, but it's a gritty slog to get down. You're also carrying a few curate balls for variety, those cheese rocks that could double as ammo. They're meat's sidekick, adding fat to keep you from wasting away. Joke 2, your diet's so meat-heavy, you're starting to bleat like a sheep in your sleep. If you're lucky, you might score a scrap of fat or tendon at the next yam station. But don't hold your breath. Those guys hoard the good stuff. As you ride, you feel the meat's energy kicking in. Your legs steadier in the stirrups, the steps a blur, and you're locked in the rhythm hooves, wind, the creak of your saddle. You're thinking about dinner, but it's probably more borts, maybe with a side of borts for flair. The next station's a faint dot on the horizon, and you're praying they've got a fire to warm your hands, because the wind's turning sharp. Your horse snorts, sensing the push, and you give it a pat. Meat's keeping you alive, but it's a grind, and you're starting to wonder if the con's messages are worth this. Let's see what else is on the menu tomorrow, because there's gotta be more than just meat and misery, right? You're swaying with your horse's stride, the steps stretching out like an ocean of grass under a sky heavy with clouds. The air's got a bite now, and your breath puffs in little clouds as you tug your hat lower. Your saddlebag's lighter every day. And that's not a good thing. Your rations are dwindling, and the next yam station's still a few hours off. Yesterday's bort's paste is a faint memory, and your stomach's whining for something new. Good news, you've got a treat today, if you can call it that. It's time to crack open a flask of arag, the fermented mare's milk that's as much a Mongol staple as it is a test of your gag reflex. Let's dive into this funky drink and why it's a big deal out here. Mainstream history tells us the Mongols were obsessed with their horses, not just for riding, but for food, and drink mare's milk was a cornerstone of their diet. As a yam postman, you're hauling a small skin of arag, maybe a pint, because it's too heavy to carry more. It's made by milking mares, letting the liquid ferment in a leather bag with a starter culture, and shaking it until it's fizzy and sour. The result? A tangy, slightly alcoholic sludge that smells like old yogurt and hits your tongue like a punch. You take a cautious sip, wincing as it coats your mouth. It's not refreshing, more like drinking a bad decision, but it's packed with calories and nutrients. A liquid meal for when solid food's scarce. Here's the quirky bit: arag wasn't just food. It was a social glue. Mongols drank it at feasts, offered it to guests, and even used it in rituals, like sprinkling it for good luck. Some postmen swapped stories at yam stations, passing a communal arag bag like it was the 13th century equivalent of a beer pong table. Historians still argue whether arag's low alcohol content, about 2%, gave riders a buzz or just a bellyache. But either way, it's your only drink besides water. You're not chugging it for fun. It's a calculated gulp to stretch your rations, especially when your borts and kurut are running low. You're rationing arag like it's liquid gold, maybe an ounce or two a day. It's heavy, sloshes in your bag, and leaks if the skin's not sealed tight. So you're picky about when to indulge. Today, you're feeling bold or desperate, so you take a second sip, letting the sourness linger. Joke one you'd trade this flask for a smoothie, but the nearest blender's a few centuries away. The arag's calories hit fast, giving you a quick jolt to keep riding, but it sits heavy in your gut, like you swallowed a rock. Your horse flicks its tail, probably judging your life choices. Beyond nutrition, arag's a cultural badge. You're not just a postman, you're a Mongol, and this drink ties you to the steppes, rhythms, mares, herds, the whole nomadic vibe. It's not just about survival, it's about identity. That said, it's an acquired taste, and you're still acquiring it. Joke 2, arag's so potent, you're half convinced it could wake a coma patient. As you cork the flask, you glance at the horizon. The next yam might have more, but it's a gamble some stations skimp on the good stuff, leaving you with nothing but water and wishes. The steppes quiet now, save for the wind and your horse's steady huff. You're burning energy fast, and Arag's a small comfort in a job that grinds you down. You tuck the flask away, pat your saddlebag, and urge your horse onward. The clouds are thickening, and you're hoping for a fire at the next stop to warm your bones. Tomorrow, we'll check out what you're wearing to survive this brutal ride, because trust me, it's more than just a cool hat. For now, keep sipping that Arag. It's the closest you'll get to a party out here. You're trudging through the steppe, your horse's hooves kicking up dust that clings to your face like a bad memory. The wind's turned vicious, slicing through the gaps in your gear, and you're thankful for the layers keeping you from turning into a human icicle. As a Mongol postman in the Yam system, your clothes aren't just fashion, they're armor against a landscape that doesn't care if you make it to the next station. That Arag you sipped yesterday is a sour aftertaste, and your saddlebag's feeling lighter. But right now, it's your wardrobe that's keeping you alive. Let's peel back those layers and see what's shielding you from the steppe's brutal moods. Mainstream history notes that Mongol riders were dressed for function, with clothing designed to handle extreme weather while staying light enough for long rides. Your base layer's a wool tunic, soft against your skin, but tough enough to last months of sweat and grime. Over that, you've got a deal. A long, padded coat made of felt or quilted cotton, cinched at the waist with a leather belt. It's knee-length, with slits for riding, and it traps heat like a hug from a very warm sheep. On top, a sheepskin or fox fur cloak adds extra insulation. Think of it as your personal portable fireplace. Your hat's a masterpiece conical, fur-lined. With ear flaps you can tie down when the wind starts screaming. It's not stylish by today's standards, but it keeps your brain from freezing mid-gallop. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen wore silk undershirts, not for luxury, but because silk was tough and could help pull arrows out of wounds without tearing flesh. Yep, you're basically wearing medieval Kevlar, courtesy of the Silk Road's trade boom. Historians still argue whether silk was standard for Yam riders or reserved for elite warriors. But either way, you've got a thin silk layer under your tunic, just in case a bandit's aim is better than his manners. It's not bulletproof, but it's a small edge in a job where edges are rare. Your pants are wool, loose for comfort, but tucked into your boots to keep out dirt. The whole outfit's waterproofed with animal fat, usually sheep or horse, smeared on to repel rain and snow. It smells like a barn, but you're past caring. Your belt's not just for show, it holds a knife, a pouch for boards. And those jingling bells you're still embarrassed about. The ensemble weighs maybe 15 pounds, heavy enough to feel but light enough to let you ride like the wind. Joke one, you look like a furry burrito, but at least you're a warm one. The steppe's weather is a mood swing on steroids. 1 minute it's sunny, the next it's spitting sleet. Your layers let you peel or pile as needed, but stripping down's a gamble. A sudden storm could leave you shivering. You're sweating now. The sun's back out, so you loosen your deal and let the breeze cool you. Joke two, your wardrobe's so versatile. It's like the Swiss Army knife of medieval fashion. As you ride, you feel the cloak's weight, a reminder of the foxes that gave their lives so you wouldn't lose yours to frostbite. Your horse snorts, sensing a Yam station in the distance, and you adjust your hat, tying the flaps tighter against the wind. You're burning calories just staying warm, and that quirret you munched earlier isn't cutting it. Your clothes are holding up, though patched in places, but still solid. The silk undershirt's a quiet comfort, even if you hope it never has to play arrow catcher. Tomorrow, we'll check out those boots you're stomping around in, because they're doing more work than you might think. For now, keep your deal cinched and your eyes on the horizon. The steppe's not done testing you yet. You're pounding across the steppe, your horse's rhythm a steady thrum under you as the horizon shimmers with heat. The wind's kicking up again, flinging grit into your eyes, and you're glad your deal's collar is high enough to shield your face. Your feet, though they're the unsung heroes, snug in boots that have seen more miles than a modern marathon runner. As a Mongol postman in the Yam system, your boots aren't just footwear, they're your lifeline, built to keep you glued to the saddle and trudging through whatever the steppe throws at you. Let's slip into those boots and see how they carry you through this relentless ride. Mainstream history tells us Mongol riders relied on sturdy, practical gear to survive their nomadic life. and boots were a key piece of the puzzle. Yours are knee-high, made of thick leather with felt or wool linings for warmth. The soles are tough, layered with extra hide to handle rocky trails and muddy yam station yards. They're snug but flexible, with a slight upward curve at the toe to slide easily into stirrups, perfect for long hours in the saddle. The leather's greased with animal fat to repel water, because wet feet in the steppe are a fast track to misery. You lace them tight with horsehair cords, ensuring they won't slip when you're vaulting on or off your horse at a dead run. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen stuffed their boots with dried grass for extra insulation, swapping it out every few days to keep things fresh. It's like a medieval sock liner, except it crumbles into your toes and smells like a hay bale. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread trick or just something desperate riders did when winter got nasty. But you've got a bit of grass in your boots today, and it's keeping the chill at bay. It's not exactly cozy, but it beats frostbite. Your boots weigh a couple of pounds each, heavy enough to feel solid, but light enough for agility. They're scuffed, patched, and starting to mold to your feet like a second skin. You spend most of your day in the saddle, so the boots don't take the brunt of walking. But when you dismount at a yam station, they're your only defense against frozen mud or scorching sand. Joke one, your boots are so tough, they could probably deliver the mail without you. They also protect your shins from stirrups and branches, because the steppe's not exactly a groomed trail. As you ride, you shift in the saddle, feeling the boots grip the stirrups. You're burning through that Bort's paste from yesterday, and your legs are screaming from days of riding. Your boots, though, are holding strong, even if the grass stuffing's starting to itch. You remember that airag you sipped a few days back? Its sour kick feels like a lifetime ago. The steppe's quiet today, save for the creak of your saddle and the occasional hawk overhead. You spot a yam station smoke in the distance, and your horse picks up the pace, sensing rest. Joke two, your boots have more miles on them than a budget airline, and they're still not complaining. Dismounting will be a relief, but you're dreading the moment you peel off those boots. Your feet are probably staging a protest. They're built for speed and survival, not comfort, and you're feeling every step of that trade-off. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the real MVPs of this job, your horses, because without them, you'd be walking this route in those grass-stuffed boots. For now, you adjust your hat, tug your deal tighter, and keep your eyes on that smoke plume. The station better have a fire, because your toes are dreaming of warmth, and you've got miles to go before you can kick those boots off. You're flying across the steppe, the grass a green blur beneath your horse's pounding hooves. The air's sharp, carrying the scent of earth and sweat, and your deal flaps against your thighs as you lean into the ride. Your boots, stuffed with that scratchy grass from yesterday, are holding up, but the real star of this show isn't you, it's your horse. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, your mount is more than a ride. It's your partner, your engine, and the only thing keeping you from hoofing it across this endless plain. Let's saddle up and see why these horses are the heartbeat of your journey. Mainstream history credits the Mongols' small, sturdy horses with powering their empire's vast reach, including the Yam postal network. Your horse is a Mongol breed, short and scrappy, with a barrel chest and legs like iron. It's built for endurance, not beauty, able to gallop for hours and survive on sparse grass and dirty water. You've got at least one spare tethered behind, because the Yam's brutal pace up to 200 miles a day means swapping mounts every 20-30 miles to keep fresh. These horses are trained to obey without fuss, letting you vault on and off at stations like a medieval stunt rider. Without them, the Khan's messages would be gathering dust. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen name their horses after battles or ancestors, believing it gave them luck or speed. Your lead horse, a wiry bay, is called Kalka after a famous victory. You're not superstitious, but you're not taking chances either. Historians still argue whether this naming was a personal quirk or a cultural norm. But when Kalka snorts and powers through a muddy stretch, you're glad you picked a fighter's name. You pat its neck, feeling the heat of its muscles, and whisper a thanks. It's carrying your weight, your gear, and the Empire's secrets without complaint. Your horses are your lifeline, but they're not pets. You're rough with them out of necessity, pushing hard, switching mounts, and leaving tired ones at yam stations for the next rider. Each horse carries about 100 pounds, including you, your saddlebag, and that Bort-stuffed pouch you're still grimacing over. The saddle's simple, leather with a wooden frame, padded with felt to spare both you and the horse. You check the cinch as you ride, because a loose saddle at full gallop is a great way to eat dirt. Joke one, your horse is so tough, it could probably outrun your boss's temper. Managing spares is a hassle. They're tethered to your lead horse, and if one lags or spooks, you're wrestling ropes while dodging hooves. You're burning calories just keeping them in line, and that airag buzz from a few days ago feels like a cruel tease. The step's quiet today, but you're scanning for wolves or bandits. Your horses are prime targets. Joke 2, you'd trade your spare for a self-driving horse. But the step's Wi-Fi is terrible. As you spot a yam station's outline, you ease Kalka to a trot, giving it a breather. The spares plod behind, ready for their turn. You're sore, your boots are pinching, and your deal's collecting dust. But your horses keep you moving. They're fed sparingly grass when you stop, maybe a handful of millet at stations. Their stamina humbles you. While you're choking down kurut, they're grazing like champs. The station's close now, and you're dreaming of a fire and a moment to stretch. Tomorrow, we'll check out those yam stations, because they're not exactly five-star hotels. For now, you lean forward, urging Kalka on, and thank the steppe spirits for horses that don't quit, because without them, you'd be a very tired postman. You're easing your horse to a walk, the yam station's squat silhouette finally solidifying against the steppe's hazy horizon. Your thighs ache from gripping the saddle, and Kalka, your trusty bay, snorts with what you swear is relief. The spares trailing behind are plodding along, their hooves kicking up dust that sticks to your deal. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, these stations are your pit stops, the only breaks in a job that feels like running a marathon with no finish line. Let's step inside and see what passes for hospitality out here, because it's not exactly a cozy inn with a hot meal waiting. Mainstream history describes yam stations as the backbone of the Mongol postal network, spaced 20-30 miles apart to keep riders like you moving fast. They're not much to look at low huts of wood or felt, sometimes just a cluster of yurts, with a corral for horses and a fire pit if you're lucky. You dismount, knees wobbling, and hand Kalka to a surly station hand who's already sizing up your spares. The station's job is to provide fresh horses, basic supplies, and a place to crash. But provide is a generous term. You're getting the bare minimum: a new mount, maybe some borts, and a corner to curl up in. Here's the quirky tidbit: some stations doubled as spy posts, with managers eavesdropping on riders' chatter to report gossip or dissent to the Khan. You keep your mouth shut as you step inside, eyeing the grizzled station chief who's stirring a pot of something that smells like boiled regret. Historians still argue whether this spying was systematic or just opportunistic, but it's enough to make you choose your words carefully when you ask for water. The hut's dim, smoky from a dung fire, and the floor's packed dirt. You're not here for comfort. You're here to swap horses and keep moving. Inside, a few other riders slump against the walls, gnawing on kurut or sipping airag from a shared skin. You nod but don't linger. The yam's a job, not a social club. Your saddlebag's open, and you trade a pinch of borts for a scrap of dried fat from another rider. High stakes bartering out here. The station's rations are meager: more borts, maybe some millet flour, and water that tastes like it's been sitting since Genghis was a kid. Joke one, you'd kill for a vending machine, but the nearest one's a few empires away. If you're lucky, there's a mat of felt to sleep on, but don't bet on it most nights. It's just you and the ground. You check your new horse, a wiry chestnut with a bad attitude, and sling your bag over its saddle. The station hand grunts something about bandits on the next stretch, so you tighten your belt, feeling the weight of your knife, that silk undershirt you're wearing under your tunic, the one you hoped would stay arrow-free. It's itching now, a reminder of the road's risks. Joke 2. This place makes a gas station restroom look like a spa. As you gulp some water and choke down a kurut ball, you think back to that grass-stuffed boot trick. Your feet are still holding up? Barely. The fire's warmth is tempting, But you've got miles to cover before dark. You thank the chief, who barely acknowledges you, and mount up. The chestnut tosses its head, already testing you, but you're too tired to care. The steppe waits, vast and indifferent, and you're just a speck carrying the Khan's words. Tomorrow, we'll see how you cook on the road, because out here, chef means stirring borts over a fire and hoping for the best. For now, you nudge your horse forward, leaving the yam's faint comforts behind, your deal flapping as the wind picks up again. You're crouched by a small fire, the steppe's darkness pressing in as embers crackle and spit. Your horse, tethered nearby, munches on sparse grass, and the wind carries a chill that makes your deal feel thinner than it is. The yam station you left hours ago is a faint memory, and the next one's too far to reach tonight. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, you're cooking on the fly, turning your saddlebag's grim rations into something edible. Let's stir the pot and see how you whip up a meal when your kitchen's a patch of dirt and your stove's a pile of burning twigs. Mainstream history notes that Mongol riders were masters of improvisation, relying on portable, durable foods that could be prepped anywhere. Your go-to is borts. That dried meat powder you're practically married to by now. You scoop a handful from your pouch into a small iron pot, your only cookware. Banged up but loyal. Add a splash of water from your skin, and you've got the base for a thin stew. You set the pot on a flat stone by the fire, stirring with a stick because forks are for fancy folk. The borts dissolves into a gritty broth, smelling faintly of mutton and survival. It's not gourmet, but it's warm. And out here, warm is a personality trait. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen added mare's milk curds to their stew. Not for flavor, but to thicken it into a paste that stuck to your ribs. You've got a couple of kurit balls, those cheese rocks you're still chewing like a grudge. So you crumble one into the pot. It melts reluctantly, giving the broth a sour tang that reminds you of that arag you sipped days ago. Historians still argue whether this curd trick was a writer's hack or a regional recipe, but it's doing the job tonight, turning your stew into something you can almost call a meal. You stir, watching the firelight dance on the pot's dented rim. Your cooking setup's minimal flint to spark the fire, dry grass and twigs for fuel, and that pot, which you guard like a treasure. You're burning dung, two-horse, or yak, whatever's around, because wood's scarce on the steppe. It smells awful, but it burns hot, and you're not here to win a Michelin star. If you're lucky, you've got a pinch of millet flour to toss in, making the stew a bit heartier. Joke one, you're cooking so basic, it makes instant ramen look like a feast. You're eating maybe once or twice a day, and this fire's your only shot at a hot meal before the next yam. The steppe's quiet, save for the fire's pop and your horse's soft huff. You're sore from riding, your boots still stuffed with that grass you're too tired to swap out. The stew's ready, and you sip it straight from the pot, burning your tongue but savoring the heat. It's salty, chewy, and barely fills the hole in your gut, but it's enough to keep you going. Joke two, you'd trade this meal for a taco, but the nearest tortilla's a continent away. You clean the pot with a scrap of cloth, saving every drop of water, because refilling your skin depends on finding a stream tomorrow. As you bank the fire, you think of Kalka, your horse, who's grazing like a champ while you wrestle with borts. The stars are out, sharp and endless, and you pull your fur cloak tighter. Tomorrow, we'll see how you scrounge for wild food, because the steppe's not exactly a farmer's market. For now, you settle against your saddle, the stew's warmth fading fast, and listen to the wind. Your yam root waits, and you've got messages to deliver, whether your stomach's happy or not. Sleep's calling, but the steppe never sleeps, and neither does your job. You're trudging across the steppe, your horse plodding beneath you as the sun climbs, painting the grass in shades of gold. Your deal's dusted with yesterday's grit, and that bort stew you cooked last night is a distant, slightly sour memory. Your saddlebag's getting lighter, and not in a good way. Rations are thin, and the next yam station's hours off. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, you're used to making do, but sometimes you've got to lean on the steppe itself for a meal. Let's forage through the wild and see what you can scrounge when Kurut and Borts aren't cutting it. Mainstream history tells us Mongols were expert survivalists, supplementing their portable rations with whatever the land offered. The steppes no supermarket, though edible plants are scarce, and animals are wily. You're scanning the ground as you ride, eyes peeled for clumps of wild onions or garlic, their green shoots poking through the dirt. If you're lucky, you'll spot some edible roots like wild carrots or burdock, tough but starchy enough to fill the gap. You dismount, knife in hand, and dig up a gnarled root, brushing off the soil. It's bitter, like chewing on a grudge, but it's food, and you're not picky. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some postmen chewed on dried fish bones from steppe rivers, grinding them into a gritty paste for calcium when meat was scarce. You've got no fish today. Rivers are a day's ride off, but you've heard the stories at yam stations. Riders boasting about sucking marrow from bones like it's candy. Historians still argue whether this was a desperate measure or a planned supplement, but it's the kind of weird trick that keeps you alive. You're sticking to roots for now, slicing them thin and tucking them into your pouch for later. They'll boil up with Borts for a stew that's only slightly less sad than usual. Foraging's a gamble. Berries, like wild currants, are a rare treat, but half the time they're sour enough to make your face pucker. You found some yesterday, a handful of red specks you ate on the spot, and they're still staining your fingers. Animals are tougher hares and marmots are fast, and your knife's no match for their speed. You've got a horsehair snare in your bag, but setting it takes time, and the yam's schedule doesn't care about your hunting dreams. Joke one you'd chase a rabbit, but your horse is the only one with a shot at catching it. Water's still your biggest worry. You're sipping sparingly from your skin, but a muddy stream nearby lets you refill. You strain it through a cloth, because drinking dirt soup is a great way to spend tomorrow curled up in pain. The steppes stingy, and every root or berry feels like a small victory. You're burning calories faster than you can replace them, and that Erig buzz from days ago is a cruel tease. Joke 2. Your foraging skills are so bad, you're starting to eye your boots for nutrients. Your calca grazes nearby, unbothered, while you're out here playing steppe botanist. As you remount, you feel the root's weight in your pouch, a tiny buffer against hunger. The steppes vast, indifferent, and you're just a speck with a message to deliver. Your deal's heavy with dust, and those grass-stuffed boots are starting to smell like a barn. The horizon's empty, but you know a yam station's out there, maybe with a fire to cook your sad little harvest. Tomorrow, we'll check out the flair in your outfit, because even postmen have style. Right for now, you nudge calca forward, clutching your knife and praying the steppe coughs up something tastier than dirt. You're swaying in the saddle, the steppe's endless grass rippling under a sky streaked with clouds. Your horse, calca, plods steadily, and your deal's starting to feel like a second skin, caked with dust and sweat. That wild root you foraged yesterday is tucked in your saddlebag, a gritty promise of tonight's stew. But right now, you're adjusting the sash at your waist, its bright color a rare splash of personality. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, your clothes are built for survival, but there's a bit of flair in the detail style that says you're more than just a dusty rider. Let's untie that sash and explore the fashion behind your function. Mainstream history notes that Mongol clothing was practical, yet expressive, with even utilitarian gear, like yours, showing cultural pride. Your deal, that quilted coat you've been living in, is plain wool, but the sash cinching it is a vibrant red, woven with geometric patterns. It's not just decorative, it keeps your deal secure during high-speed rides and holds your knife, Bort's pouch, and those jingling bells you're still side-eyeing. The sash is wide, wrapping twice around your waist, and its color marks you as a yam rider, a badge of your role. Your fur hat, with its conical peak, has a silk ribbon tied around the base, a nod to the trade routes that make your job possible. These touches aren't random, they tie you to Mongol identity, even out here in the middle of nowhere. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen wove horsehair charms into their sashes, tiny braids said to bring luck or ward off evil spirits. You've got one, a small knot of calca's tail hair, tucked into your sash's folds. It's probably nonsense, But after dodging a wolf pack last week, you're not taking chances. Historians still argue whether these charms were personal superstitions or part of a broader ritual. But they add a spark of individuality to your otherwise grim kit. You adjust the sash, feeling the charm's slight weight, and it's a quiet comfort as the step stretches on. Your outfit's not just about looks. The deal's high collar shields your neck from sunburn, and your silk undershirt, still arrow-proof, fingers crossed, adds a whisper of luxury under the grit. Your boots, grass-stuffed and battered, have a stitched pattern along the cuffs, a flourish from the cobbler who made them. These details matter when you're days from civilization. They remind you you're human, not just a cog in the yams machine. Joke 1, your sash is so bright. It could guide ships in a fog, if the steppe had ships. The colors also help yam station hands spot you from afar, which is handy when you're staggering and half dead from cold. As you ride, you catch your reflection in a stream during a quick water break. You look like a nomad rock star, if rock stars smelled like horse sweat and arag. The sash's red pops against the deal's drab wool, and you tighten it, feeling a flicker of pride. Joke 2, your style's so bold. You're basically the step's runway model, minus the runway. Your current stash is dwindling, and that route you scrounged isn't exactly a feast, but your outfit's holding strong. The wind's picking up, and you're glad for the sash's grip, keeping your deal from flapping like a sail. The next yam station's a faint smudge on the horizon, and you urge Kalka forward, the spares trailing behind. Tomorrow, we'll see how you survive the steppe's freezing nights, because flare won't help when your teeth are chattering. For now, you adjust your hat's ribbon, pat your sash's charm, and ride on. The steppe doesn't care about your fashion sense, but out here, a splash of color feels like defiance, a reminder you're more than just the Khan's mailman. You're huddled by a dying fire, the steppe's night wrapping around you like a cold, heavy blanket. Your horse, Kalka, snorts softly nearby, tethered to a stake, while the spares shuffle in the dark. The stars are sharp overhead, but they don't warm you, and the wind sneaking through your deal seams, making you shiver. That bright sash you were so proud of yesterday, it's just extra fabric now, tucked tight to block the chill. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, you're used to brutal days, but the nights test you in a whole new way. Let's see how you survive when the steppe turns into a freezer, and your bort stew isn't enough to keep the cold at bay. Mainstream history tells us Mongols were built for harsh climates, with riders like you mastering tricks to endure sub-zero nights without modern gear. Your first defense is your clothing, that deal fur cloak, and grass-stuffed boots you've been dragging around. You pull the cloak tighter. It's fox fur trapping what little heat your body's got left. The deal's high collar shields your face from the wind, and you've tied your hat's ear flaps down, turning yourself into a woolly cocoon. But clothes alone won't cut it when the temperature drops to bone-aching lows. You're banking the fire with extra dung and twigs, coaxing it to last longer, because a dead fire means a long, miserable night. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen slept pressed against their horses for warmth, using the animal's body heat like a living radiator. You're not quite there tonight. Kalka's loyal, but you're not cuddling just yet. But you've positioned your saddle and blanket close to him, letting his bulk block the wind. Historians still argue whether this horse snuggling was standard or a last resort. But it's a trick you've seen other riders use at yam stations, piling together like puppies. For now, you're relying on the fire and a felt mat from your saddlebag, barely thick enough to keep the frozen ground from stealing your warmth. Your fire's your lifeline, but fuel's scarce. You're burning whatever you can scrounge: dung, dry grass, the occasional stick. You've got a flint to spark it, and you're careful to shield the flames from gusts, using rocks as a windbreak. Joke 1, your campfire's so pathetic. It makes a birthday candle look like a bonfire. You're sipping the last of your water, warmed slightly in your pot, and nibbling a currant ball that's harder than the ground you're sitting on. That wild root you foraged a couple of days ago? It's in the pot now, boiled into a bitter mush that's more punishment than food, but it's calories, and you're not in a position to complain. Sleep's the goal, but it's a fight. You curl up near the fire, knees to chest, and wrap your cloak over your head, breathing into it to trap warm air. Your silk undershirt, still clinging to its arrow-proof dreams, is a thin comfort under the deal. The cold seeps through anyway, and you're half awake, listening for wolves or bandits. Joke 2, you're so cold, you're starting to envy Kalka's thick coat. Your yam root doesn't care about your comfort. The Khan's messages need to move. And dawn's coming, whether you're rested or not. You think back to that Arag buzz from last week, wishing for its fleeting warmth. As the fire sputters, you add the last of your dung, praying it holds till morning. The stepp's silent, save for the wind's low moan and Kalka's steady breathing. Tomorrow, we'll look at the toll this diet's taking on you. Because Borts and Kurut aren't exactly a balanced meal plan. For now, you tuck your hands into your sash, pull your hat lower, and try to dream of a yam station with a proper fire. The stepp's got no mercy, but you're tougher than you look, and you've got miles to ride when the sun comes up. You're back in the saddle, Kalka's steady gait rocking you as the steppe unfolds under a pale morning sky. Last night's fire is a cold memory, and your deal still smells faintly of dung smoke. Your stomach's grumbling. No surprise those Kurut balls and that bitter root mush you choked down are barely holding you together. As a Mongol postman in the yam system, you're pushing your body to the limit. And this diet of Borts, Arag, and whatever the steppe coughs up is starting to take its toll. Let's tally the cost of surviving on this grim menu, because it's not just your taste buds that are suffering. Mainstream history tells us the Mongols' nomadic diet was high in protein and fat, designed for energy but not long-term health. You're eating maybe 1,500 calories a day, half what a modern athlete needs while riding 50, 100 miles, and battling weather that swings from scorching to freezing. Borts gives you protein, but it's salty, taxing your kidneys, and you're rationing water like it's gold. Kurut adds fat and calcium, but it's so dry it scrapes your throat raw. That Arag you sipped last week, it's got some vitamins, but its alcohol and sourness upset your gut if you overdo it. You're lean, wiry, and tough, but you're also tired. Your joints ache, and your teeth are taking a beating from all that chewing. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen ate raw horsehair to settle their stomachs, believing it swept their insides clean like a broom. You haven't tried it. Kalka would probably give you a dirty look, but you've heard riders at yam stations swear by it for digestion. Historians still argue whether this was a real remedy or just steppe folklore, but it's the kind of desperate hack that makes sense when your diet's this rough. You're sticking to Borts paste today, mixed with a splash of water, but it's sitting like a rock in your gut, and you're starting to dream of fresh bread, or dare you say it, vegetables. The lack of variety's the real killer. No fruits, no greens, just meat, dairy, and the occasional foraged root that tastes like dirt's evil twin. You're probably deficient in vitamin C and A, and scurvy's a real risk if you don't luck into berries or wild onions. Your body's burning muscle to make up for the calorie gap, and you're losing weight, even if your deal hides it. Joke 1, your diet's so bad, a medieval peasant would send you a care package. Your teeth are another worry. Grinding Kurut and hard bread is wearing them down, and the nearest dentist is a few centuries away. You're young, maybe 20, but you feel 40 on bad days. Your energy's low, but the yam doesn't care. You're pushing Kalka hard, the spares trailing behind, and you're scanning for the next station's smoke. That silk undershirt, still itching under your tunic, feels like a cruel joke when you're this run down. Water's your lifeline, but your skin's nearly empty, and the last stream was too muddy to trust. You're rationing sips, which makes swallowing Borts even harder. Joke 2, you're so hungry, you're starting to eye Kalka's grass with envy. The stepp's vast, indifferent, and you're just a speck, carrying the Khan's words while your body begs for a break. As you ride, you adjust your sash, feeling the horsehair charm you tied in for luck. It's not much, but it's a reminder of why you're out here: duty, pride, maybe a shot at a better life. The physical toll's real, but so's your grit. You think back to that Arag buzz, those grass-stuffed boots, the nights by the fire. Tomorrow, we'll wrap up your journey, reflecting on what this life means as the steppe fades into sleep. For now, you nudge Kalka forward, ignoring the ache in your bones. The next yam better have water, because you're running on fumes, and the Khan's messages won't deliver themselves. You're riding slower now, the steppes' golden grass softening under a sky bruised with twilight. Kalka's hooves thud gently, and your spares trail behind, their shadows long and weary. Your deal's heavy with dust, that red sash still knotted tight, but your body's screaming every muscle, every bone, worn thin by weeks of borts, querut, and a diet that's more punishment than nourishment. As a Mongol postman in the Yam system, you've carried the Khan's words across an empire. But now, as the horizon glows faint, you're reflecting on what this life's carved out of you. Let's ride into the sunset, tracing the legacy of your journey and the quiet weight it leaves behind. Mainstream history hails the Yam as a marvel, a postal network that bound the Mongol Empire's vast sprawl, letting messages fly faster than armies could march. You're part of that, a speck in a system that moved orders, news, and secrets from the Pacific to the Caspian. Your ride's grueling. Endless kept the Empire's pulse strong, delivering scrolls that sparked wars or sealed peace. You're not a hero, not a warrior, but your horsehair charm, your battered boots, and that silk undershirt still clinging to its arrow-proof dreams tell a story of grit. You've outrun wolves, survived blizzards, and choked down airag that could wake the dead, all for a job most will never know. Here's the quirky tidbit: some postmen carved tiny horse figures from bone, tucking them into their sashes as talismans for safe rides. You've got one, whittled during a rare, quiet night, its edges worn smooth from your thumb. Historians still argue whether these were common or just personal quirks. But it's nestled against your sash now, a piece of the steppe you carry close. It's not much, but when you're alone under these stars, it feels like a friend. You pat it, thinking of Kalka, the Yam stations, the fires that kept you alive. Your legacy's not in songs or statues. It's in the hoofprints you've left, the messages that shaped an empire. You're tired, your teeth ache from querut, and your gut's still mad about that root stew. But you're proud. The steppes taught you endurance, the kind that outlasts hunger or cold. Joke one, you're so tough. You could probably deliver mail to the moon if they had horses. As you ride, you glance at the spares, their heads low, and feel a kinship. They're not just beasts, they're comrades, carrying you through a job that's as brutal as it is vital. The next Yam station's close, its smoke curling like a promise. You're dreaming of a fire, maybe a scrap of fat to chew, but you know it'll be more borts and a hard mat. Joke two, your life's so wild, a reality show would cancel you for being too real. You adjust your hat, its ribbon frayed but stubborn, and let Kalka pick the pace. The steppe's vast, but it's home, and you're part of its story, a rider who kept the Empire's heart beating, one gallop at a time. Now, let's slow things down. Let the steppe's edges blur. Your fire's embers glow softer. The wind's howl fading to a whisper. You're curling up by Kalka, his warmth a quiet gift, your deal wrapped tight. The stars above are gentle, their light a blanket over the grass. You're not just a postman, you're a thread in the steppe's endless weave, carrying dreams as much as messages. Feel your breath ease, your shoulders loosen. The Yam's demands can wait. Tonight, it's just you, the stars, and the soft hum of the world turning. Let the saddles creak, the fire's last pop, carry you to rest. Sleep's here, warm and deep, pulling you under like a river. Drift now, let the steppe hold you.